Hopefully most of you saw the short as well as the feature. So I'm just going to start by addressing, well, I'm going to ask a few questions first myself and then just throw it open to the floor. So I'm going to ask the first question to Jack Davis, the director and writer of the short film. Where did that come from? What were the influences behind that? Where did the idea come from?
Well, it started out as a horror film, a very short horror film, a few minutes long, and I got funding from the Borough Film Commission, and the film expanded and became 15 minutes. It turned into what you saw. So the initial kind of idea was really a horror idea, and but it just needed more for the funding and to make it into a decent short film. So that's kind of how it progressed. So over a few months we did a lot of script editing and ended up with as you said.
And the funding? Where did you get the funding from for it?
It's the Borough Film Fund. So they do funding across London in 10 different boroughs, and they pick a couple of short films to make, and it was 2,500. So they give everyone around about that sort of money, and it was shot over 2 days, lots of scenes in 2 days, and we just made the money stretch. We had to pay people as well, because that's part of the commission is to pay everyone involved minimum wage, and that's how it turned out.
Okay, thanks. I'll throw the same question over to Eran. Where did the idea come from for your film?
My first film, Shifty, was a socio-realist drama, sort of you could call it a kitchen sink drama, but and then the opportunity came to make my second film, Welcome to the Punch. And I grew up on a massive love of the heroic bloodshed era of John Woo, like in the late 80s, early 90s, Hardboiled, The Killer, A Better Tomorrow. So I just set about writing basically a film based on my love of like late 80s, early 90s Hong Kong action cinema and infernal affairs, and basically set about writing the script, and the end product is what you just saw tonight up on the screen.
I guess most of you have seen Shifty here. I mean, it feels like a big jump to go from 100,000 for that film to, I don't know what the budget of this was, 5-6 million?
5.2 million, yeah.
Okay. And was that how did you negotiate that jump?
It was all kind of, I directed commercials for Nike and Adidas, Nike, Coca-Cola and bigger budget commercials. So I was used to working on sort of with larger crews and music videos as well. So I was kind of used to working with bigger crews and working for a larger scale. It's just that the film that I did, my first film, just so happened to be 100 grand. So, but by utilising the crews that I'd worked with on music videos and commercials, I managed to squeeze out as much as I could on my first film. So trying to make a 100 grand film look like it cost $1 million, and then with this, the sort of competition was trying to make the element was to try and make a 5.2 million film look like it cost 15 million. So it was kind of the same skill sets that I learned on Shifty and trying to apply them to this.
I'll throw it open to you guys in a minute. The one question I've got is, the film has a particular look. I haven't seen London portrayed in that way before. How did that evolve?
Just by working with my director of photography. We were in Paris and we were shooting a Nike commercial, and we had quite a minimal crew. We were shooting on 35mm cameras, and we had some sort of minimal amount of lights, and we were looking at the footage that we were achieving, and I was saying, we seem to be like, this looks really slick and really glossy, this advert, but we'd managed to achieve it for a sort of smaller amount of money, because I was kind of shooting these add-on commercials that Dante Ariola had shot, and I was shooting the follow-on commercials. And I was like, well, we must be able to achieve that look in London. So we just went about, we tested 35mm cameras, we tested digital cameras, we went out and we tested the look and stuff for about a good 2 or 3 weeks, and just testing how we were going to achieve that on the scale. But it was also just trying to push ourselves at all time. And the production design on the film was, the production had worked with Ridley Scott and Tony Scott, and he'd worked on Gladiator and Alien and Hannibal, and so he kind of knew the tricks of the trade to try and the way it's production designed, to try and achieve it and make it look more expensive. And we were just always trying to push it and there were moments on set where we'd set the camera up and we were looking at the frame and we'd be like, this just looks like an episode of The Bill. We need to scrap this and start again, and we would just kind of always try and push ourselves. We went around getting James McAvoy. Well, there's because Shifty was out there already, and I'd been nominated for a BAFTA, and then we were having trouble getting traction on the film because it was such a low budget, £100,000 movie that we couldn't get traction on Welcome to the Punch. So we then got an executive producer attached, which was Ridley Scott, and I sent him a copy of Shifty, which is like this kind of small indie kind of urban movie, and I sent him a copy of the script, and it got sent to him in Los Angeles, and he watched Shifty and really loved Shifty, and then he read the script, and then he said, yeah, get this kid, I always do it in an American accent, even though he's from up north, yeah, get this kid over, I want to speak to him. So I flew over to LA, and met with Ridley Scott, and he really responded to Shifty and the screenplay. And then he just said he came on board, and then as soon as Ridley Scott sort of says he's on board as executive, because Scott Free want to do more films like this in London. They kind of want to do what EuropaCorp are doing in France at the moment and make more action-orientated, stylistic British movies. And so he came on board, and then as soon as Ridley Scott starts picking up the phone, you're just like at the back, and he's like, look, I've got this young kid, I believe in him, you should too. And he literally would just phone people up in front of you, and you'd be like, so yeah, it was cool, and that's how we, and you know, and they obviously like Shifty as well. On Shifty, there's a scene where Riz Ahmed is arguing with his brother, and his brother flushes the drugs down the toilet, and we'd scripted it like a really bad episode of EastEnders, and everyone was like, they were screaming at each other in this scene, and no offence to EastEnders, but it was just like when you're making a movie, you have to. It's kind of more about what's not said rather than what's said. And then the producer pulled me aside and was like, mate, this scene's really dodgy. I was like, I know, we need to do something about it. And he was like, lose all the dialogue. I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. So we went back, and I said to Riz, and it was Nitin Ganachari, who's actually in EastEnders, he's a really good actor. I said, try and do the whole scene without any dialogue. And they were like, what? I was like, we'll just do it. And they were like, okay, cool. So they kind of did this whole scene. He flushed the drugs down the toilet, and Riz ran in and he grabbed his head, and they were like, they just stood there, and he kind of half headbutted him, and then they just, and it was really intense, and it's what's ended up in the film. And then I think there's a sequence in the film where James has just seen that Andrew and Sarah's dead, you know, in the morgue, and Mark has just seen his son dead as well in the morgue, and they're on the Thames beach, you know, and James is looking out across the water, and Mark walks down. And originally we'd rehearsed the whole sequence, and we'd done the whole stuff in like 2 weeks before, and it was a huge argument. They, like Mark Strong and James McAvoy, just screaming at each other, arguing, raging in this rehearsal. I'd written all this over the top dialogue, and then my mum had almost died of liver failure a few months, or like about a year before. And then I thought, you know what, I just actually, like, when someone nearly dies or you experience something like that, you can't speak, you're catatonic, you can hardly get the words out. So on the morning of the shoot, I just said, listen, I'm going to change that scene, and I just rewrote it and just kind of kept it really minimal and said, he just walks up to him and said, you know, what happened to my son? And then he says, why didn't you shoot me in that tunnel? And he says, for what? And then he walks away, cries, comes back, says, right, we're going to do this. And it sounds like a really weird way to do it, but originally that was like a massive sequence of dialogue, and we sort of read it on the day, and you just kind of, and then Peter Mullen ad-libbed the line about, he's like, I can't feel my legs. You know, I can't feel my legs. He went, really? He said, fuck off. And he came up to me before we shot that, he says, there's a line that I've always wanted to say in a movie. And I said, what? And he says, I want to be lying there shot, and I go, I can't feel my legs. And the person says to me, really? He says, no, fuck off. And I was like, all right, go for it, try it. And then we did all the takes normally, how it was in the script. And then, because it was quite serious, and then he did that line, ad-libbed it, and then everyone was behind camera, like, cracking up. Yeah, and we kept it in the film, and it was kind of, so yeah, you can throw moments in there or change stuff on the day, but if you make a short film, or you make a feature film like Shifty, which is $100,000, or you make a feature film like Welcome to the Punch, which is $5 million, as directors, we're all racked with insecurity consistently. Like, I think I'm an absolute fraud and a fake, and I lay awake at night every day before the first day on shoot, just sweating and going, they're going to discover that I'm an absolute fraud, and they're just going to pull the carpet from under my feet, and I can't believe that I'm doing this. And then, you know, and then I said in Empire magazine this, like, last month, that the morning of the shoot of Welcome to the Punch, the first day, I was sweating, I was washing my face in the mirror, and I looked in the mirror and went, okay, showtime. And my wife went, did you just say showtime into the mirror? I was like, no. I think coming from commercials, the way I deal with it is just to be prepared as prepared as you can be, and just prepare, preparation. And same before Shifty, even though it was low budget, I storyboarded the entire movie and shot listed it, and the same for this. Before I made Shifty, I'd never made a short film or worked with actors before, so like, that was my first thing that I ever did, but I just went into it as prepared as I could be, because it was a sort of semi-autobiographical tale of where I'd grown up. And then with this, I'd just watched action films since I was a kid. Like I just literally went back and watched Die Hard, and I watched Hard Boiled, and I watched Heat, and I watched Infernal Affairs, and I turned the sound off on the film and just watched the way the images were put together. Because the one thing that can make a film feel, I think, much more complex is sound design. Yeah, and you know, the music and the score, but actually if you strip that away and turn it off and just look at how the images, because that's all it is a camera, and you just aim it and you just get the images on there, and then you put those images together, and then afterwards you put amazing sound design and score on. And I would just watch some like really cool action sequences, strip away the sound and go, it's actually really simple. Well, not simple, but it's kind of like, okay, that's the basic elements, and you just can literally copy some of that stuff. And the sequence in the Nan's house, you know, the shootout in the Nan's house, I went back and looked at Mission Impossible, you know, with Tom Cruise, the first Mission Impossible. And I looked at the sequence where he was in the restaurant, you know, he's in that guy in the restaurant, and he throws the chewing gum and it hits the fish tank and the fish tank explodes. And I just copied how Brian De Palma constructed that sequence, how it starts off really wide and then it goes really, really tight and then it goes to Dutch angles. But he copied Hitchcock. So it's like in a long way around, I was kind of copying Alfred Hitchcock, but from Brian De Palma. So I just copy everyone.